Hello, everyone, and welcome to A New Direction. My name's Jay Izzo, and oh, man, another outstanding show. God, I love this job. I love this part of my job because you don't know how easy this job is, right? Yes, I read the books and stuff like that, which I love because I'm if you look at my strengths, I'm a learner, so I love the reading and everything. It's just part of what I love to do. So I get to do what I love. But then you know what? The other thing that makes this so much easier when you have great authors who write great freaking books like this one, The High Altitude Entrepreneur, a framework for scaling smarter, leading better, and living freer by Chris Clearfield. Let me just say this to those of you who are entrepreneurs, who are leaders in general. Let me just say this to you. Are you frustrated because your team won't take leadership? Are you stressed because it feels like you have to do everything because no one else can do it right and you need things done? Does it feel depressing when you wake up every day and you've got just a ton of emails and everybody is just after you for something, and it's like, why can't I get any help? Maybe help is not the problem in another person. Maybe the help and maybe the problem is you. We don't like to look at ourselves very often when it comes to us as being the problem. You will say to me, because I hear this, I coach executives, I hear this all the time, Jay, you just don't understand. Oh, no, I do. I've been around for a long time. I've seen it a long time. I have to tell you, everything starts and stops with you. And the fact of the matter is, you know, as I think it's Peter Drucker who said it, right? What, or maybe it was Marshall Goldsmith. I don't remember which one. What got you here to this point isn't what's going to get you there. So what you do is you rely on the old tapes, the old operating system that you said, this is what got me here. And so when things go south or things go bad or things get into crunch time, you pull out that old operating system because it's what worked all before. So I'll just employ that again. And maybe there is a little bit of a quick fix, but it doesn't last for the long term. And so you wind up stressed, depressed, burned out, and have compassion fatigue. And you wonder why. We're going to get answers to that question because that's what Chris Clearfield is going to help us do today. He's outstanding. So please give me a second. Let me introduce you to him. Chris Clearfield is a leadership strategist, author, and Harvard-trained scientist who works with high-performing entrepreneurs to help them scale without becoming bottlenecked in their own business. He has coached founders, executives at small to medium enterprises and large companies, including Netflix, Microsoft, Etsy, and ExxonMobil. I think you've probably heard of those, among others, helping leaders navigate complexity, redesign how decisions get made, and build teams that operate with clarity, ease, and ownership. He's the co-author of Meltdown, Why Our Systems Fail and What We Can Do About It, winner of the National Business Book Award and the Thinkers 50 Strategy Award. And he joins us with his new book, which is entitled The High Altitude Entrepreneur. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show. And welcome to the first time, and I don't think the last time, as far as I'm concerned, Chris Clearfield, welcome to A New Direction.
Jay, so excited to be here with you. Yeah, so excited for this conversation.
Yeah, so let's just dig right into the conversation. You know, chapter 1's entitled The Stress of Low Altitude Thinking. And I love it. The low altitude alert comes out. You say, even if you're a successful entrepreneur, it's likely you've also felt the friction of a business that technically works, but only because you're constantly pushing.
Yeah.
And even with a strong team, the founder still ends up being the linchpin. So let's talk about this person. Let's identify and let's create the avatar and what's really happening out there. Who is this person that we're talking to, and what are they experiencing most likely?
Gosh, this person is so talented, right? They are so talented. They are so good at what they do. And they are really the reason why I wrote this book, because I was working with entrepreneurs and I was tired of seeing really good people who had built really good businesses, but were just drowning in their own success. And, that didn't mean that they were struggling every day necessarily. But what it did mean is that they knew where they wanted to be. They knew the vision that they had for what was next in their business, in their life, and they didn't know how to get there. And what I really saw, so you introduced me, Harvard trained scientist, right? My first career was on Wall Street. I wrote Meltdown, which is a book about complex systems. And what I realized as I started working with these entrepreneurs is that, the work at the beginning of my career kind of mirrored where a lot of these entrepreneurs were, right? They were really good at doing stuff. They were really good at, getting in there, mixing it up, solving problems. And Meltdown is a book that's about the way that systems affect things. And as I started to work with entrepreneurs and I started to think more through that lens of systems, it was like, okay, they're good at solving a bunch of problems, but what are the consequences of that problem solving? And the consequences of that problem solving, the thing, as you said, Marshall Goldsmith, like the thing that made them successful in the first place is actually what ends up keeping them stuck.
So when we think through this, right, you talk about that there's some low altitude patterns. One of them you mentioned is that they're doing instead of leading. Another one you mentioned is that the team is misaligned, right? And then there's the one that you're the one that everyone waits for.
Yeah.
So when we think about those three things and we start thinking about that, if your growth, which I don't know that we can call it that, still is depending on that person's everyday decisions, their vision, their drive to move things forward, they are the bottleneck, right?
Right.
So let's unpack that just a little bit about, okay, how you got there in terms of being the bottleneck of your own company despite your own success.
Well, right. It's almost not despite your own success. It's because of your own success, right? I mean, that I think is the thing, that the strategies that whether you're an entrepreneur, which is kind of who this book is for, or a corporate leader, which, I've worked with, like you have worked with a lot of folks in senior corporate leadership roles, like what gets you to the next level, that ends up being your Achilles heel when you get to that next level. So if you think about an entrepreneur for a minute who, has a successful product, right? Has product market fit, is going out there, is got a firm that is generating revenue, but very often they are still the ones that they hold on to the taste, right? They know what good looks like, and they're not able to externalize that and get that out of their head and into the hands of their team. So when their team brings them something, it's like, oh, that's not good enough. Or like, oh gosh, that doesn't work, or you're making the wrong call here. And then the team ends up being trained into this posture of dependency, no matter how good they are as a kind of an individual, how excellent they are as an individual leader, they get wrapped in the pattern of the founder. I was talking with a founder the other day. They run a HVAC business, right? So they do big commercial HVAC installations. And this is somebody I'm working with, and they have, their neurotype is such that they are always following the most interesting thing that's put in front of them, right? And what's interesting about it is that mirrors the whole company. They are a whole organization that is driven by interruption, driven by, you have a question, you go find the one person that has the answer, you interrupt whatever they're doing. And so as a result, like there's a benefit to all of this, right? Like you can go somewhere, you can get an answer quickly, but the cost is that the focus is completely diluted across the organization.
So this brings me to the low altitude cycle, because this fascinated me as well as the high altitude cycle, by the way. I thought they were both fascinating, but I want to go through this a little bit of how this happens, because we're all triggered by something in our business as business owners and leaders, right? And so then we get triggered by something. What happens in this cycle next?
Well, for so many of us, we just drop into the problem solving instinct, right? So So we get triggered. We have a stress response, right? So like, oh, I got to solve this thing, right? I've got to get this thing off my plate. It's an email that comes in. I got to respond to it, get out there. It's a customer with a complaint. I got to respond. It's a problem with somebody on my team. I got to respond to it and get it out there. So we have this stress response, and our instinct as humans is to get out of the stress response, right? We don't like being in the stress response. And so we want to just solve this thing and push it away. And it's that capacity to solve things. That's part of what we've been talking about that made us successful in the first place. But when that's all you can do, when that's all you lean on, what happens is, because you're in the stress response, your solution is often not great, and it's often not durable. And it trains your team to go to you with a problem and wait for you to bring the solution back. So this low altitude cycle creates actually more problems than it solves. And it's because the whole thing is oriented around seeing problems, not seeing the actual underlying tensions that are running your business.
I think it was kind of cool to see how, we have the stress response, and you talk about this in the book too, about, we get stressed, right? We're always searching for equilibrium. I don't care if it's physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, whatever it is. We're always searching for equilibrium. So we get into a stress response. So now we're trying to get equilibrium. So what we do is we do something, we react to it, right? Whatever it is. But what I find interesting about this is either you get stuck or you're in chaos, right? Which seems like two opposing things that can actually happen to you, right? Where it's like, okay, you're either stopped and are doing nothing, or it's so chaotic and frenzied that either one creates being more overwhelmed, which creates more stress, right? So the cycle continues. I think that's the thing that people miss in this. And I think the point that you make in this is that you don't understand. You're in a freaking loop here.
Yeah.
You're not getting out of this loop. Go ahead.
And it's a seductive loop, right? Like that's the thing. It feels like the thing that so many entrepreneurs end up optimizing for unconsciously is reward, right? Like it's thing comes up, boom, you solve it. It's that dopamine hit, right? And what I think they miss is that when you're stuck in that reward loop, the thing you're giving up is you're giving up satisfaction. You're giving up building the business that you actually want to build, building the life that you actually want to build. And that's why it's such a freaking paradox at the heart of this, right? It's the more success you have, the more stuck you get. And it's wild. And when I meet an entrepreneur at this stage of the journey, like they know it. They know that they're in a dilemma, but they can't name what that dilemma is yet. And that's what this work helps them do.
You make a statement in this chapter too. It says most founders, I'll say leaders, I'll include them too. I don't want to exclude you people out there because you're part of this. What most founders miss is that their business mirrors their own habits. Would you explain to everybody what you mean by that?
Well, I think there's a way in which everybody who just heard that statement, if they take a second to pause, they'll probably feel some truth in that for themselves. But this founder that I was just talking about, this commercial HVAC company founder, he is somebody who, as I said, is oriented to what's in front of him, oriented to action, oriented to that kind of interruption mentality. For a while, they had signs on people's doors that said, were they available or not available for an interruption? But then that system didn't hold anybody, right? Because when he wanted to do something, he would go and he would interrupt and he would get it taken care of, or he would let himself be interrupted because that was more compelling for him than what he was focusing on in that moment, or what he was trying to focus on in that moment. So it's just this beautiful example where you just get this cascade that rolls out from the founder, that rolls out from the leader. And you see it over and over again. If a leader values harmony, the organization values harmony. If a leader values results, the organization values results. Like it really, it's this fractal process that really just happens because of the way that the leader controls the shape of the organization, and also because of the way that nervous systems are entrained and attuned to each other. There's
also this unconscious piece that I think we that we don't really talk about, but that you describe pretty well here, I think, in this book, that this isn't a conscious process. So when you come in, you don't even realize what you're really giving off as your, dare I say, vibe, but there is your psychology that you're not even aware of is actually, and I love using this term because I don't believe there's any business problems. I believe there's personal problems that infect your business. And I use the word infect in that way intentionally.
Boy, I just cringe when I hear that word infect. And I think that means it's doing its work.
Right. So then what happens is your psychology starts infecting the business on an unconscious level because of the things that you do as a leader. I mean, because, I don't think that they recognize, that their own behaviors, their own words, the tone of their words are creating a culture that's so unintentional. Do I see that correctly?
Yes, and I'm going to take it a level deeper because I think, yes, it's the tone. Yes, it's the words. I think even deeper than that, it's the actions that those folks are taking over and over and over again, right? They may say they prioritize one thing, but the way they're acting actually prioritizes something else. And then there really is the level of their nervous system, right? If they have a sense of urgency and stress, that is going to create a sense of urgency and stress in those around them. I worked with a woman who ran a very successful manufacturing firm. She did like manufacturing repair. They'd repair big pieces of equipment for big industrial sites. They would get, called out. Hey, there's this big problem. It's costing us a lot of money. We need an urgent fix. Her whole business rotated around this urgency, right? And when we started working together, she told me, she's like, I have, my 8 strategic priorities on my whiteboard and none of them are getting done. And so the thing that is for me, like, that's the way into this work, right? Like, that's not a bug, that's a feature. There's some value in the way that she's operating. So our coaching didn't start with, hey, you got to start focusing on the important. Like, yeah, she knew that intellectually, right? But as you're saying, these decisions that she's making, those are pre-intellectual, right? There's something about her that is wired to the urgency. And so where we start is, hey, what's the benefit of the urgency? What are you getting from that? Like, what's the upside of that for you? And that's where we look in terms of tensions. And that's where that approach is really powerful, because what she saw was, it wasn't that she was kind of failing at being an urgency, right? She was getting a tremendous number of benefits at being an urgency. And once we could hold that up against strategic focus and the benefits of strategic focus and the cost, and the biggest cost for her of strategic focus was, it feels boring to me. It's like, okay, now we've got a way in to support you to play with a different way of being here, support you to experiment with a different way of being that doesn't involve you being at the effect of this, stack of historical things that has led to your tendency to urgency.
His name is Chris Clearfield. The book is entitled The High Altitude Entrepreneur Framework for Scaling Smarter, Leading Better, and Living Freer. It's awesome. And we just started. You're listening to him here on A New Direction. Hey, folks, you tune into a new direction to grow your business, right? And your mindset. But you can't move forward if you're worried about what's lurking in your inbox. That's where Data 443's Siren, C-Y-R-E-N, comes in. It's the industry standard for real-time email security and URL filtering. They stop phishing and malware before they strike, so you can focus on your success, not on your safety. Don't let a cyber attack derail your journey. Go to data443.com today and secure your future. And Linda Craft Team Realtors, you know what? For more than 40 years, you know what? They've been helping people take the stress out of real estate. And they've done that consistently all over. You know what? If you're always stressed about the stress of real estate, which you can be, right? Because buying and selling a home is one of the top stressors that will ever be. Go to Linda Craft Team Realtors. You'll find that they're able to take a lot of the stress off you with that 40 plus years of experience. Professional negotiators, they can help you, I promise. Check out lindacraft.com, LINDACRAFT.com. And we're back here on A New Direction with Chris Clearfield, his book, The High Altitude Entrepreneur Framework for Scaling Smarter, Leading Better, and Living Freer. Just getting off the first segment. And we're about to just jump into chapter 2, Enter the High Altitude Entrepreneur. You open up with the story of Priya, which I thought, and by the way, you have a lot of examples here. I thought Priya was a really interesting story. And I thought, she's someone who I think a lot of people can relate to. And I think what you're going to find, folks, when you purchase this book and you read it, I think one of the things that you'll find is that there's a story that's you, and which is why he put them in here. I promise you, there's one story in there that even if it's not 100% you, it's 80 to 90% you. Okay, and maybe it's a combination of people. All right, and so Chris, we've talked about that problem solving can actually create more problems.
Yeah.
But then you give us a paradox. You say the paradox that's the paradox of entrepreneurial growth. The strengths that launches can start holding us down, which is what we've kind of been talking about a little bit. We talked about the low altitude cycle that traps us into the problem solving mode. So now we want to enter the high altitude framework, right? Which I found quite interesting because this framework is not a loop anymore.
It's not a loop. It's a spiral.
It's a spiral. So now we get triggered, right? And we can be overwhelmed, right? We're not saying that doesn't happen, but then we move into tension, right? And I know we're going to get into it's more specifically, and maybe this is a good time to talk about tensions before we get into clarity, choice, and altitude, but action and then altitude. Let's talk about this tension, which is going to take us also into chapter 3 about the power and tension. What is tension?
Tension is very simple, right? It's seemingly opposing forces that are present in your person, in your leadership, in your life. It is the kind of the juicy heart of everything, right? One entrepreneur I was talking with said they were like, as we worked around their tension, they were like, this is where the juice is, right? It is just like we were talking about a minute ago, urgency versus strategic focus, right? That is a tension. It is an irreducible tension in every entrepreneur's business, in every entrepreneur's journey. We are always being pulled between these two forces. And the thing that happens for entrepreneurs, and I like that we're talking about the spiral here, because you're never going to be not triggered, right? You're never going to not have stuff that's the landing on your plate for you to handle, right? Like that is just what is part of the world and your existence. But as one entrepreneur told me, they're like, I don't want no problems. I want better problems, right? Like I want the kind of problems that I actually want to solve. I don't want to just be solving the same problem over and over again, which is what happens when you're in the loop. So looking at the lens of tension, that is the way we do that. That is the way we shift from being stuck in this problem solving loop, stuck in this sense of overwhelm and stress and feel like we need to solve the problem to get out of it. Instead of solving the problem, the first thing we do is we take a step back and we look at what are the actual forces that is driving the situation right now.
So let's just go through maybe a couple of these tensions that I have here in front of me, and so that you can kind of give us an example. Are you cool with that?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay, so let's talk about the tension of control versus delegation. So when we put that tension together, what are we saying? Because I think this is a common one, by the way. I think control versus delegation is extraordinarily common. So talk to us about how that tension and what we're looking at here.
Well, I love this one because you're absolutely right. And for almost every entrepreneur, there is a stage at which they are in this control versus delegation tension, right? And you can tell this because you can tell it's a tension because every entrepreneur in the world has heard just delegate, right? Oh, what you're stuck, you just got to delegate. Who, not how, right? I don't care what, it's language in every kind of framework, right? But the interesting thing to me is, okay, if the advice is out there and it's so simple, then why is it so hard to follow, right? Like, why are people getting stuck with it? And for me, that's part of the clue that there is a tension here. That yes, you've got delegation, which is kind of idealized in a lot of cases, but there's a payoff to being in control, right? Like you know everything that's going on. You control the quality of the work. You can very quickly set the direction. You get a lot of feedback, right? If you're in control and something goes well or doesn't go well, you get a lot of immediate feedback. So that's how we know that there's a real tension here, that there is an upside to being in control and a cost to it. And entrepreneurs are often keenly aware of the cost, but not aware of the upside that they get by choosing it over and over and over again. So once we see it as a tension, we actually get to kind of move outside of the stuckness and shift our perspective. It's like that book Flatland, the old what's his name, Edwin Abbott book. There's a whole nother dimension here, and once you can see that you're in this two-dimensional surface, you stop being stuck in control. In this example,
yeah, I think this is the one where there is this urgency to have to control it. Right. Yeah. The marketing piece doesn't look right. So I need to control it to fix it. Yeah. The leadership team the sales team isn't selling like they want. So instead of letting the sales manager kind of work through it, I got to jump in and I'm going to have to crush the sales team and start reaming them out because we got to add more systems because clearly the systems that you are using as a sales manager aren't working. So we're going to add more systems to that. Right. Yep. And you're going to follow my system sales manager because clearly your system isn't working. Right. And so, and we're going to talk about this later, but then what happens to the sales manager? What happens to the sales team?
They're demoralized.
Right. Is the sales manager even relevant anymore? Because you've decided you were going to add more systems and the sales manager is going to follow your system. By the way, what's the purpose of having a sales manager if you're going to do that? And if you're going to do that, because he or she doesn't just have a purpose anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, are you, in this question, are you running a business that has 25 employees, or are you one employee that has 25 support people around you? Right. And so many entrepreneurs are in that second camp without even being able to name that for themselves.
Right. Right. So you talk about asking this tension question, and you talk about the opposing forces that are at play. What are the seemingly opposing forces that are at play here? And when you ask entrepreneurs and leaders to ask the tension question, how do they respond to it for you? Like, I mean, do they come right out and go, "Oh, Chris, you're so right," or is it more like, "Chris, have you lost your mind? You clearly don't see that if I don't control it, that the world will fall apart and this business is doomed?" I mean, is it somewhere in between? How do people respond when you start telling, you as a strategist and you start putting this in? How do they respond to this?
Well, this is great. I love this opening because this is where this is the seam between what's on the page and what happens in the real world, right? So you can do this, right? You can do this work by yourself, right? You can be curious about your tensions. You can ask the tension question. What's really powerful is when not only is somebody else asking it of you, but they are asking about your challenge. And then from that challenge, what I do is I help draw out what the underlying tensions are. People are naming them, but I help them draw out those underlying tensions and then mirror them back to them so they can see them clearly.
Mm. And go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna ask if we could play with this together a little bit.
Sure, let's do it. I'm happy with that. Let's play.
Yeah. So what you run a business, you run this podcast. Like, what's up for you in your life?
Right. So, it's so funny because I'm going through this right now, right? Personally, right? So I'm dealing with this right now. So, I'm exploring some past traumas that have happened in my life because I recognize that there's some mindsets, as much mindset as I work, that I've got some mindset thinking that's out of control. And because
Yeah.
I'm a solopreneur, right? I control everything,
Yeah.
right? I control it all. I have a virtual assistant, right, who is incredible, and I give him free carte blanche, and if there's something that I see that we need to tweak, I ask his opinion. If he thinks
Mhm.
I have an idea and if he thinks it's okay. But what I notice the real problem is with me, what triggers me is if somebody says something or somebody does something that it's an old trauma
Yeah.
that comes up, especially when it comes to like, how I really feel about the next level of success, right? There's an old trauma thing from my parents that I've had to
Yeah.
identify and really look at really, really deeply and go, you know what? I gotta change the way I'm thinking about this, right? Because I don't have the tensions that you bring up here, right? Because I don't have these off tensions, but I guess for me as a solopreneur, right? It's more of personally developing and seeing the tension of how I'm triggered by when somebody does something or sees something. Like it could be like a client, says, "Hey, I think we've gone about as far as we can go and we're done here." And I'm feeling like we got more to do, right?
Mm.
And so then there's that tension of going, okay, I got to come up with something to say to control that situation
Mm.
rather than recognizing, right, that, maybe I've put that client in a place where this is where they're at right now. And when they need the next step, it's okay. So maybe this is some of my own personal abandonment issues or whatever they may be, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I don't know if this is fitting with what you want, but it's a different set of a mindset and thinking and that I've got to work through
Yeah.
because I know that I am not thinking right because I've had to recognize things from my past that my parents, who were good people, because of their messed up mindset, right,
Yeah.
gave me without realizing it. They thought they were doing the best thing for me, right?
Yeah.
Right. At the time that they did the best they could, but it did give me some bad operating system code,
Yeah.
for lack of a better word, right? Does
Well,
that
I, I'm,
am I
yeah,
going
yeah,
anywhere close
yeah.
to where you want to go?
No, this is beautiful. And I think the first thing I want to say is just like, I'm just taking in what you're saying, right? And one of the
Mhm.
things I'm taking in is what you said about like, hey, I'm a mindset coach. I've done all this mindset work, and yet I still have this mindset work to do, right? And
Right.
there's something I think so powerful just about that recognition. And I'm just really appreciating that. Because this work is never done, right? Like we're
Right.
all like, if you're on this path, this work is never done. And I was talking with a friend yesterday and I was saying, well, 4 months ago, I was a totally different person, right? I mean, that's kind of that's what I'm always looking back. I have a lot of compassion for my past selves. So I wanted to acknowledge that you're putting something forth that's really real. And it's easy to sit on the side of the microphone that we're sitting on and feel like, oh man, we have to be in our expertise, right? We have to be like, and what I say is our expertise is not about knowing, right? It's about learning. It's about being open. So this is first an acknowledgement of what you're saying. But the thing that strikes me that it's kind of at the heart of what you're saying is what I think is this deeply human tension of like, gosh, how much are we open and connecting to other people versus how much are we standing in our own boundary? And I mean, that is such a universal tension. And I mean, you're nodding. Does this, you relate to this? You relate
Oh
to
yeah.
this as a tension?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I have this too. And I'm, um, I'm somebody who in times of stress reaches for connection, right? I'm somebody like, I know that about myself. It showed up the other day in a really funny way. I was riding my bike. There was another cyclist in front of me and there was a truck parked in the bike lane. I live here in Seattle. And, I could kind of see the truck. Are they going to move? Whatever. They moved out of the way. And I was like, oh, that's nice. The truck moved out of the way. I went to go give him a wave. The cyclist in front of me, she flipped him off. And I was like, oh, That's so interesting. I said I was going to give him a wave to thank him for getting out of the bike lane. She was like, he shouldn't have been in the bike. He shouldn't have been camping in the bike lane in the first place. I was like, oh yeah, this is like me reaching for connection and her clearly being in her boundary. So this is the work. So, to answer your question from a couple of minutes ago, the work is not, yes, there's a list of tensions you can look at. You can identify when you're in control versus delegation. You can really, you can do some work to kind of self-identify and self-serve. And we've got a workbook that goes along with the book that is a guide for people to do that. And when you get to the deepest level of this work, the way it shows up is people are describing what is present for them in their life. And then the tension is really what emerges from that. And then, when that happens, when that tension emerges, there is this moment of recognition, and it's almost like a clicking into place that happens. It's like, oh, like you now see the shape of the puzzle piece that you're working with in a different way.
I could spend all day talking about the tensions. I could, but I think this is where we got to get to chapter 4, which is step 2, which is creating clarity with a tension map.
Yeah.
Because I think this is an important second step, because I think what we did is, the first thing, we got to be aware. And I think you acknowledge this too throughout the book. It's several times throughout the book that awareness is critical. You've got to be aware that you've got these tensions, and you need to be aware they both are serving you and not serving you, right?
Yes.
And where did you get them from, right? It's just all these important awareness pieces. But then we get to creating clarity with the tension map, and so describe it, and then maybe tell why mapping this out is so important, because it's a simple map for people because we can verbally describe it simply, and I think people can get it. So just let's go through, what is a tension map?
Yeah, a tension map very simply is, you take this tension, which are these ands, right? Urgency and strategic focus, control and delegation, right? There's upsides and downsides of each of those. And what you do is you just write down the upsides and the downsides of each of those. You go through kind of quadrant by quadrant, and you just articulate for yourself, what are the upsides and downsides? And there are 2 incredibly powerful things that happen when you do that. The first one is you are taking some kind of action. So we're in that low altitude cycle. The action you were taking to get out of your stress was that problem solving that created more problems down the road. In the high altitude cycle, the action that you're taking is you're mapping out your tension. So you're seeing the picture clearly, often for the first time. And when you see that picture clearly, what you'll see in a tension map is you'll see, oh, there are these hidden barriers to moving into the other pole, the thing I'm not doing right now. There are these hidden barriers to doing it. I think it's boring. I'm scared of it. It could go wrong. And there are these hidden barriers that are keeping you where you are now. It feels safe. And when you get down to those are often on a deep level, right? Those are often on the level of like meeting your nervous system's need for safety, for control, for belonging. And once you've seen that on the page, it changes everything.
Well, if we can name it, we can tame it.
Yeah.
Right. It's the psychological jargon we use, right?
Yep.
And so when I can see it on paper, right, it seems like I can tame that much easier. Right?
Yeah.
Because I've got a visual, pictorial visual of it now, and all of a sudden reality can set in, and I can name, because we've named the tension, but now I'm actually really putting a name to it. I've actually put a visual name to it that I can actually attach to, which I think is just incredibly important, because you can think about these things all day long.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And that's a great first step. But if we don't do something, if we don't see it, and we actually look at it, and we actually say, oh, that, right? That's when we start to make that second level of change, at least from a psychological professional standpoint.
Yeah. What do you mean by the second level of change? What's that?
Well,
what's that
because
mean?
the first level of change is awareness, right? I've got so I'm already starting the change. The second level of change is being able to see it on paper.
Yes.
So now I'm starting to move into the second level of changing myself. and changing what I'm doing. I can't, because like with your high altitude um, uh, spiral, right? Every level is a level of change
That's right.
that I'm going through.
Right.
So everything starts the same. I'm triggered, I'm overwhelmed, but then I identify my tension. Now I'm putting that, okay, that starts the change. But then my second level of change is, okay, now I'm putting it on paper. Now the reality starts to set in. Wow, what am I really doing here?
Yeah.
That's what I mean by that.
Yep. And then I'm in agreement with that. And I think the, one of the things that's interesting about the awareness piece is how much of a difference that it makes.
Yes.
And then once you, and what's interesting, I've been doing an experiment for the last little bit, Jay. I run a monthly coaching process where I have an entrepreneur in the hot seat. So they're the one getting coached. They're my featured entrepreneur every month. And then I've got a room of other entrepreneurs that are witnessing the coaching, camera off. They're kind of participating, but they're not the ones that are being coached. And the fascinating thing is, what happens is, as I'm coaching that featured entrepreneur, they are coming to some kind of recognition and awareness for themselves. And then the room, we bring people back on camera at the end, and they get to reflect on what they just saw and how does it apply to their business. And what is fascinating to me is when they see that spark of awareness happen in one person, it happens in them also.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a tremendously powerful forum where you don't have to be out there and you don't have to be exposed, but you get to kind of get the benefit of seeing that awareness show up in somebody and see that, oh, there's a shape of that puzzle piece that also fits into your puzzle. And I run that every month. It's called Elevate. Can I tell people where to find out about it?
No, please. Go, Joe. You have to throw it out. Come on, Chris.
Yeah, clearfieldleadership.com/elevate. And then you can get on the invite list, and you get an invite every month with who the featured entrepreneur is, and kind of what they're wrestling with as they go into that.
Okay, clearfield.com
Clearfield Leadership.
clearfieldleadership.com/elevate. Okay, I'm going to put that in as a link in the notes for the show.
Great.
On the blog post. Okay.
Great.
Great stuff. His name is Chris Clearfield. The book is entitled The High Altitude Entrepreneur, a framework for scaling smarter, leading better, and living freer. You're listening to him here on A New Direction. Hey, folks, in a digital world, your inbox is to the front line. Is yours defended? Data 443 Siren provides next generation anti-phishing and threat detection that works instantly in the cloud. It's the invisible shield that keeps your business running smoothly while blocking the chaos outside. Protect what you've built. Head over to data443.com and get protected today. And, here's the thing. If you're planning a move, you have to check out lindacraft.com. Honestly, and I know I'm biased, it is much more than just a home listings and, where you can find homes for sale. Linda understands, and she's known this for over 40 years, that moving impacts the whole family, including your kids and your pets. This is why her website features exclusive advice from a child psychologist. It's to help your kids adjust to the move. Even tips from a veterinarian on how to move with pets. It's a complete emotional resource center for you and your family. Listen, see the difference for yourself. Log on today to lindacraft.com. And listen, I just want to say this. I grew up in the Midwest. And out there, you know what? We hate spinning the tires in the mud. Okay. So if you're a leader feeling stuck right now, let's skip the 400-page textbooks and get right to the point. Listen, I combine a high level of executive psychology with plain old common sense to turn frustrated leaders into absolute winners. That's it. You don't need any more corporate jargon. You need traction. Let's get you winning again. Head over to jayizzo.com. That's JAYIZSO.com. And let's get to work. And we're back here on A New Direction with my friend. He doesn't know we're friends, but we're friends now. Chris Clearfield, the book, The High Altitude Entrepreneur Framework for Scaling Smarter, Leading Better, and Living Freer. As you were talking, about how people were observing in your clearfieldleadership.com/elevate class, one of the things that came to me is back from grad school was the work of Bandura, who did observational work, how kids could learn, in this case, bad things by just observing somebody else, right? but we can also learn good things
Yeah.
by observing someone else. The point is that observation can help us in our own self-learning. And I think that's really cool that you're doing that. And I wanted to bring that up. The other thing I want to bring up here in this chapter, though, is the Zeigarnik effect. And I want to lead with that because I love, first of all, the whole thing about Bluma Zeigarnik back in the 20s and sitting in the French cafe and observing waiters and the whole thing and how this all came about it is a fascinating effect. But it fits into this way. Basically, when we have leaders, entrepreneurs, they feel like they got to close something. We all feel that way, right? Right. We all feel that we've got to close the open loop.
Yeah.
Right. Let's talk about that because I think so often this is where leaders get themselves into trouble. So let's talk about that. This urgency to close the loop in their business.
Well, one of the things I'm a pilot. I'm a flight instructor, and one of the things you learn as a flight instructor is a famous, Air Force teaching. It's like when there's an emergency, the first thing you do is wind your watch, right? Because you don't want to make that worse. And this goes back to what we were talking about with the low altitude cycle. With when there's a problem that shows up, the instinct is to solve it because you want to close the loop and you want to exit the discomfort that open question has. And so much, there are so many open questions today, right? I don't care if you're an entrepreneur or a corporate leader, there is so much changing. And if you are just trying to close the loop over and over and over again, you're just going to run yourself to death, right? The treadmill's never going to stop. And so part of what leaders get to learn, I think, is negative capability, right? This phrase from the poet Keats, like, how do you sit in the uncertainty? How do you sit in the doubt? And leaders don't necessarily have a lot of tolerance for that from a philosophical perspective. So what's the other thing we can do? Well, we can support that process. And part of how we support that process is just mapping out what is here, because that does just as good a job of closing the loop as reaching for that, so grasping for that solution does.
I find it so fascinating that we don't think about it. It happens in our everyday life, right? If somebody writes a clever enough headline, right, we feel this urgency to have to go see and read the rest of the story. If the movie business does their job right with the little previews of what the movie is, we feel this sense of urgency. We've got to go see it. But then in our business, right, when we see something undone, it's like a shoelace that we feel has to be tied. Right. All the time. And what they find, I think, and this is what I think you're saying too, is that there's constantly something that they see that just feels like it's not closed. And they feel this urgency to have to close everything, and they have zero patience to wait for somebody else to do it. Or if they do it, it's never done to their standard. And so it's still open.
Yeah, you nailed it.
And that's frightening for many people out there, right?
It's frightening to have that open loop, you mean?
Yeah. You talk about in step 3, creating super choices. I had to read this section. I'm going to be really honest with you. I had to read this section probably 4 times because I was trying to wrap my mind around it. Super choices. And I'm like going, okay, help me understand. Okay, we're doing the self-awareness thing. We've found the tensions, right? And then now we're putting them on paper and we're mapping them. Now I'm making super choices. What are they and why do they matter?
Well, they're at the heart of it, right? As you talk about these different levels of kind of the power of this approach and the power of the high altitude framework, super choices are where you start to translate into action. And you do that by taking that tension map that we were talking about, urgency versus strategic focus, control versus delegation, and really saying, okay, what's on here? What's on here is insight about the design specs, like the constraints that I need to design any solution against. So as any good consultant strategist knows, like the first step to having a good solution is to better define the problem, right? And so the first step of creating super choices is really figure out what your constraints are. Like, what must a solution do? What must it not do in order to feel viable for you as the leader, as the entrepreneur, as the business owner? And so once you've done that, then you just get to start being in creativity, right? Like, how might we do this? How might we build a system that gives me visibility into the tickets and the work streams that are out there, so I'm not surprised by things, while also getting my hand out of every decision in the project. That kind of question, that is a powerful opening to a real a different way forward, a kind of third way forward that is neither steeped in control nor steeped in delegation, but makes the best use of both.
And I don't want to get bogged down in this because we're running short of time, but every word of that question is so important. How, right? Ask the question. It's curiosity. Might, meaning what are the possibilities? And then we, right? How we're going to do this together. And we are going to do something. It's a very, very powerful question that I don't want the people to overlook, because we say it, how might we do this? But if you break it down and you really think through what that question asks, and as Chris does so beautifully in the book, he breaks down every word. And when you do, you go, oh, right, that's a better way of phrasing it. So I love that when you did that for me, because I was just like, oh, that's really, 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 really cool. Before we close, chapter 6, step 4, catalyze action through ownership. You ask a question, what is resistance? And I think this is a really great way to maybe end it, because I don't think we understand resistance, because what we do typically is we blame our people for the problem when they're resisting, which is a natural thing to do because of you as the leader. So let's talk about that just a little bit.
Yeah, well, the key observation, the core observation that I think just helps someone unpack resistance in a different way or can shift your perspective. When you think about resistance, everybody else is always resisting. You're not. Why are they resisting, right? You're never the one resisting. If you don't want to do something, it's because they don't get it. I don't like it. They don't get my situation. I don't trust them, right? So we never experience ourselves as the person resisting, which is a really interesting thing. And if you just start with that observation, then that kind of opens up into curiosity. So, okay, well, what is happening over there? Like,
right.
Why don't they want to do that? What is feeling like it's a threat over there? Why is it that my feedback isn't landing, right? So once you kind of recognize that there's this sort of asymmetry and like, oh, they're resisting and I'm never resisting, then it actually becomes a different kind of exploration and a different kind of question.
And I think the one thing that you do see in here and that you kind of explore here a little bit is that, it goes back to that equilibrium thing again. Yeah. We're used to having things, all things equal, right? We're emotionally, we're settled in a place. You introduce something new, you bring something in as a leader to the team, right? And you feel like they're resisting me, either they're lazy, they don't want to do it. But it really comes down to, we were happy where we were. And so change is hard. And so this resistance that you're seeing isn't because they're lazy, isn't because they don't care, it isn't because they want to do it. It's because we're just trying to maintain equilibrium.
Yeah, and often there is something that is at stake, right? People feel threatened by something, right. And that's there's a real insight in there, I think, that they feel threatened by their status feels threatened, their autonomy feels threatened. There's something core to them that is being threatened by the change that you are wanting to make. And the way to do that because you're an entrepreneur, right? Every entrepreneur I've ever talked with, every leader I've ever talked with, what they want is a team that takes ownership, right? So kind of back to what we were talking about in terms of that, just delegate. Like, if everybody wants a team that takes ownership, then we got to look at what's the barrier to ownership, right? What's standing in the way of that? And so often it's the leader's own behaviors, right? Now, sometimes it's, you don't have the right people, but if you're an entrepreneur, you got to ask yourself, why do you not have the right people? Right.
Right.
What's
Right.
the barrier there? And once you can start to see it through that lens, it just becomes a totally different game.
Yeah. This has been fun, Chris. I've loved exploring this with you. This has been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed
Yeah,
it.
me too, Jay. Thank you.
Yeah, tell people how they get a hold of you.
Well, really, I mean, the best place for people to meet me really is in this monthly session, in this monthly Elevate session. It's a handful of founders. It's live coaching. And when you watch somebody else wrestle with the tension that mirrors yours, you see that moment where things click for them. Something shifts for you too. Like, not because we're up there teaching anything, but because you witness it happening. And that's where kind of insight like turns into instinct. And once you see that, you can't unsee it, and you can't unsee that for your own circumstances and your own business. So the best place, clearfieldleadership.com/elevate, get on the invite list.
Perfect. That's awesome. Chris, thanks. Stay with me, will you please? Hey, folks, it's the show. You know what I say to you every week. You're in control of three things: your attitude, your effort, and your resiliency. Life doesn't give us what we want. We find ourselves in circumstances we didn't ask for. But you know what? You're in control of your attitude. Make it a positive one. Not always easy, but you can do that. Your effort is tied to your excellence. We don't always have the same amount of energy and the same amount of gas in the tank, if you will. But you know what you do have, you can be excellent with. Choose how excellent you will be today through your effort. And finally, your resiliency. We all get punched in the gut or punched in the teeth, and we all get knocked down. But it's up to us to get back up. Why? Because you're worth it, and we want you on the team. You know what? I'm going to be back with next week with another great guest, another great book. It's going to be actually 2 weeks, another great show. Listen, you had a lot of choices. You chose us. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm grateful for that. Just to ask you a couple things. Give us a thumbs up on YouTube. Wherever you listen to the show, give us a 5-star review. And would you do me a favor and please tell your friends about the show? It always helps. As I say to you all over the world, you know what that is, everybody. Ciao, everybody.